The phone buzzed against wet glass, and the message lit up like a siren. Maya said, "Who sent this?" A second bubble appeared, and her stomach dropped through the floor. Louise said, "Breathe. Look at me." The rooftop throbbed with music, but the words were louder. Jenna said, "It is not what you think," as if denial could rewind seconds. The screen showed Ethan's name, then the screenshot that cracked their decade like ice. Maya said, "She told you I was a phase?" A gust shoved napkins off the table, like the night flinched. Louis said, "Do not answer yet." The third bubble hit, a confession trimmed to cruelty. Maya said, 10 years, and a text kills it in seconds." The wind calmed, but the words kept moving. Maya said, "She called me a phase." The syllables tasted like metal. Louis said, "Do not let them write your ending." The memory of shared keys, shared rides, shared secrets pressed in. Maya said, "We built each other from nothing." The screen waited like a dare. She saw birthdays, job interviews, apartment moves, the small rescues. Jenna said, "You know I love you," in some older echo. A laugh from the bar sliced across the table. Maya said, "Love does not screenshot me into pieces." Louis said, "Answer only when you are ready." The corkboard was a museum of almosts. Maya said, "First day at the studio, she waited in the lobby." Jenna said, "I am your emergency contact," and meant it then. Louis said, "You too were a force." The photos showed road trips and rescue coffee runs. Maya said she knew where I kept every spare key. The new messages pulsed like a heartbeat. Maya said, "Why take a decade and sell it for a night?" The city siren wailed and faded. Louis said, "Hurt people hand you knives and call it love." The reply box blinked, hungry. The first crack had been small. Ethan said, "We should all hang Sunday," and plans shifted without her. Jenna said, "You were busy," with a smile that dodged. Maya said, "I was there in the chat, and saw the scene mark silence her." The laughter in photos felt dubbed. Louis said, "Patterns tell the truth when people do not." The second crack arrived as a favor misfiled. Maya said, "She took credit for my pitch." The text thread chimed like a bell toll. She said, "I kept forgiving because I loved our history." Back on the rooftop, the storm finally arrived. Thunder rolled like a verdict. Maya said, "I am done begging for the truth." The typing dots danced and quit. Ethan said, "We should talk," and every letter felt late. Louis said, "You owe them nothing." The decade pressed hard, then let go. Maya said, "I choose me." The city breathed in and held it. She did not reply to the message. She opened a new one and typed only a name. The send arrow waited like a blade. The playground smelled of cut grass and sugar. Maya said, "Tag, you are slow," as laughter burst from her chest. Jenna said, "You cheated," chasing with tangled pigtails and scraped knees. Louis sat at the swings, sneakers dragging dirt, shouting, "Run faster, champions!" The metal slide clanged with their joy, the world too small to hold it. Maya said, "Forever friends deal?" Jenna said, "Deal, palms sticky with melted popsicle." The promise was sealed before life taught them the cost. Years later, that deal felt tattooed in fire. The text on her phone would burn it away, but the smell of grass and the squeak of swings were proof of what once was. The night sky blinked with teenage confessions. Maya said, "We will never tell anyone else," as flashlight beams carved the dark. Jenna said, "Cross my heart." Drawing an invisible X, Louis said, "You two are ridiculous," but his grin betrayed belief. The blanket under them smelled like detergent and rain. Stars blinked through a tear in the clouds. They whispered secrets about fears, about futures, about crushes that never knew their names. The laughter turned into yawns, and promises grew roots. Maya thought, "This is the safest place in the world." Years later, safety would vanish in a single vibration, but in that moment, the night itself listened. The first apartment smelled of cardboard and instant noodles. Maya said, "We actually did it," as she taped another box. Jenna said, "No one can stop us now," kicking open a stubborn drawer. Louis said, "This place will collapse if you both lean too hard on it," but he grinned, arms full of pillows. The single lamp buzzed, flickering over mismatched furniture. The walls echoed with their laughter, covering cracks. They scribbled rules on sticky notes: no lies, no stealing fries, no secrets. Maya said, "We will make this our palace." Jenna said, "Palaces are overrated, but this one is ours." Years later, palaces crumble faster than cardboard. The road stretched empty under the desert sun. Maya said, "Do not sleep, DJ," as she flipped stations. Jenna said, "You trust my playlist," holding her phone like a crown. Louis said, "If I die to your songs, haunt me kindly," his head leaning against the window. Dust rolled behind them like a wake. The car shook with laughter, the highway endless and forgiving. They promised to keep driving until the world ran out of road. Maya said, "We are unstoppable like this." Jenna said, "We are legends already." Years later, legends bled into myths, and myths into lies, but the desert wind still hummed their chorus. The cafe table overflowed with empty cups and promises. Maya said, "We will never stop meeting here," tapping the wood with her nail. Jenna said, "This place is our church," raising her mug like a toast. Louis said, "Amen to caffeine," smirking with froth on his lip. The windows glowed with golden afternoon light. The smell of espresso wrapped around them like memory's perfume. Maya said, "Even when we fight, we come back here." Jenna said, "This table forgives everything." They carved initials under the wood, a ritual written in scratches. Years later, the scratches would outlast the promises. The table, not the people, kept its vow. Morning light felt sharp, like truth with edges. Maya said, "You saw my notes, right?" The group chat showed Jenna typing, then nothing. Louis said, "Patterns matter more than words." The coffee machine hissed like a warning. Jenna said, "Swamped, later, 2 hours late." The draft deck opened with her title on Maya's slide. Maya said, "Maybe it is a mix-up." The cursor blinked like a dare. Ethan said, "Big day, proud of you both," and it stung. Maya said, "We are a team," while her chest locked. The day stretched long and tight. The silence between replies did heavier damage than any insult. The meeting began with bright slides and dim credit. Jenna said, "I will kick us off," and Maya felt the floor tilt. Louis said, "Breathe and take notes," under his breath. Ethan said, "This strategy sings," and looked between them too long. Maya said, "That framework came from our pilot, soft but clear." Jenna said, "We all contributed, with a sunny shield." The room nodded like it had orders. Maya said, "I shared the draft at midnight," and the table blinked. Ethan said, "Let us focus on outcomes," and closed the door on the wound. The applause rang thin. Evening gathered at the gallery like rumor. Maya said, "Congrats on the feature," and Jenna's hug landed light. Ethan said, "You both raised the bar," eyes skimming the gap between them. Louis said, "You deserve the write-up," and the compliment wandered. Maya watched Jenna orbit Ethan as if pulled. Jenna said, "He needed context," and left the words hanging. Maya said, "Context is not ownership," keeping her smile on. The photographer snapped a trio that felt staged. Ethan said, "Let us reset," and hope thinned. Louis said, "Do not edit your pain to fit their frame." Night pressed close in Jenna's hallway. Maya said, "I brought your charger," and the lie tasted small. Through the bathroom door came a whisper. Jenna said, "She is sensitive, keep it quiet," and the tile echoed it. Ethan said, "We should loop her," and the faucet drowned him. Maya said, "Loop me into what?" to the silence. The mirror caught her doubt and wore it well. Jenna opened with a bright face that squeaked. Jenna said, "It was my mom," and the script felt rehearsed. Louise texted, "You safe?" and the question was heavier than the door. Storm clouds stacked over the bus stop, and patience thinned. Maya said, "Did you tell him I am unstable?" reading the line twice. Jenna said, "Do not be dramatic," and the word hit like gravel. Ethan said, "I did not say that, but it smelled like smoke." Louis said, "When people call you fragile, they want you quiet." A siren passed and swallowed her answer. Maya said, "Trust does not need a handler." Jenna said, "You are twisting me," and the sentence curled. Ethan said, "We are all tired," and slipped away. Maya said, "I am seeing the pattern," and the rain began. The phone buzzed at midnight like a siren. Maya said, "I should not look," but her thumb betrayed her. The message glowed with venom. Jenna said, "She is pathetic, always clinging." Ethan's reply followed, "Then why do you keep her around?" Maya's lungs locked. The words sliced deeper because they were not meant for her. Louis texted, "Where are you?" but her hands shook too hard to type. Maya said, "This is not a mistake. This is the truth unmasked." The decade collapsed into shards across her chest. Her reflection in the screen looked like a stranger. The chat history unfurled like knives. Jenna said, "She will never be enough," typed with casual cruelty. Ethan said, "Then let us keep it quiet, like a pact sealed." Maya whispered, "So this is how they write me out." Louis called, but silence was her only answer. The messages scrolled in confession after confession. Each line carved her trust thinner. Maya said, "I thought I was the anchor, but I was ballast." The years of laughter turned to static. The night outside beat against the glass as if trying to enter. She saved the screenshot like proof of war. Morning light had no mercy. Maya said, "Tell me this is twisted," holding the phone like evidence. Jenna's lips parted but no words rose. Ethan said, "We did not mean to hurt you," his eyes darting like prey. Louis said, "Mean it or not, you burned her life." Maya said, "Friends do not hide in shadows while smiling in the sun." Jenna said, "You always needed too much," and her tone was a blade. Ethan stepped back, shame shaping his posture. Maya said, "You did not just end us, you ended who I thought I was." The apartment walls listened. Maya said, "Every promise sounds like mockery now." Jenna said, "You made me feel small, and I hated you for it." Ethan said, "We did not plan it this way," but guilt trembled his voice. Louis said, "Excuses rot faster than lies." Maya said, "I carried both of you when no one else would." The air thickened with words that would not dissolve. Jenna said, "I wanted what you had." The confession hit like thunder, naked and raw. Maya said, "You stole it instead of earning it." Ethan said, "Stop," but no one stopped. The truth landed with silence, sharper than screams. Maya said, 10 years traded for whispers in the dark." Jenna looked away, shame stitched to her face. Ethan said, "We thought we could keep both worlds," but the words fell dead. Louis said, "You shattered something sacred." Maya said, "I gave you every version of me, and you sold them cheap." The final screenshot burned on her phone, proof that love and envy had twisted into conspiracy. Maya said, "This is not betrayal, this is erasure." The decade was gone, and all that remained was ash in her throat. The storm hammered the rooftop like a judge's gavel, rain slashing in sheets, wind flinging chairs across slick concrete. Maya said, "We are not leaving until this ends." Jenna said, "You are twisting everything," her voice cracking beneath thunder. Ethan said, "Do not shout," but his tone wavered like paper in fire. Louis said, "Let her shout. Truth deserves volume." Maya raised her phone, messages glowing like a spotlight. She said, "You erased me, line by line." Jenna said, "You were slipping. I just filled the gap," though even she flinched at the lie. Ethan whispered, "We should have never crossed that line," his eyes drenched in guilt. Maya's words fell sharp as hail. "No, you crossed me." Lightning flared, turning their faces into masks of rage, guilt, and resolve. Louis said, "Admit it, Own it or drown in silence. The sky cracked open in blinding light, and with it came the unraveling. Maya said, "You called me ballast, dead weight." Jenna snapped, "You pulled me into your shadow. I could not breathe there." Ethan admitted, "We chose cruelty because it was easier than honesty." Louis said, "Cowardice is always easier." Maya's voice trembled, but did not break. "I carried you both through breakups, through debts, through every door that slammed. I was your shelter, and you thanked me with betrayal." Jenna hissed, "I carried your storms too. I broke under the weight." Ethan lowered his head, "I only wanted the recognition without the grind." Maya struck with finality, "So you stole both." Rainwater rolled off her like armor. Louis stepped between them, steady as stone. "This ends with truth, not excuses." The music from below felt like a muffled heartbeat, fading beneath the storm's roar. Ethan confessed, "It began as a test, a secret game." Jenna added, "We wanted to see if you'd notice when things slipped away." Maya's voice sliced, "You tested loyalty by tearing it apart." Louis barked, "That is not a test. That is rot dressed as strategy." Jenna's tone cracked like ice. "You always made me feel small, like I was standing in your shadow." Maya shot back, "So you took my space instead of making your own." Ethan said, "I told her to keep it quiet until launch, until the work was secure." Maya spat, "You launched Betrayal and called it progress." The rain drenched them, each drop a cold punctuation. Louis said, "Speak it all, do not bury half the truth." Maya whispered, "You owe me the whole, even if it kills us here." Jenna's voice rose like a blade. Jenna shouted, "You were the sun, and I burned under you every day." Maya thundered back, "You could have asked for shade instead of stabbing me in the dark." Ethan's voice cracked, "I only wanted to stand beside the sun, not beneath it." Louise countered, "Then why hide in eclipse?" Maya cried, "I cheered for every win of yours until my throat bled raw." Jenna screamed, "Your cheering felt like chains, not wings." Maya's breath turned jagged, "Your envy wore the mask of love, and I believed it." Ethan said, "We thought we could live in two truths at once." Louis spat, "You carried lies in both hands and dropped them into hers." The storm answered with roaring wind as Maya declared, "This ends tonight, no more shadows." The storm eased, but the battlefield of words stayed raw. Maya's voice steadied like sharpened steel. "You are not my friend if my ruin makes you feel alive." Jenna said, "I was never your shadow. I was drowning." Ethan whispered, "I do not deserve forgiveness." Louis said, "Then stop taking space you did not earn." Maya pulled her phone from sight, sliding it into her pocket like a weapon she refused to wield again. She said, "Here is my boundary. You cannot cross me anymore." Jenna begged, "Do not walk away, we can fix it." Maya turned, shoulders square, "Watch me live without you." Ethan's apology cracked hollow. "I am sorry," and the words felt rented, not owned. Louis closed the night with finality. "We are done here." The storm finally hushed, leaving silence sharper than thunder. Sunlight crept through the blinds, like it was daring her to start again. Maya lay on the couch, staring at cracks in the ceiling that looked like veins of old wounds. She said, "I cannot unknow the words. They are stitched into me now." Louis sat at the edge of the couch, his jacket still damp from the storm, saying softly, "Then stop trying to erase them." A mug of untouched coffee sent steam into the air like a ghost rising. Maya said, "I thought friendship was armor, but armor breaks if it is only mine to carry." Louis replied, "Armor rusts unless you clean it, and you never had help." She turned her head toward the corkboard, heavy with old photos, each one a weight. Maya whispered, "Do I burn them?" Louis said, "Keep what was real. Let the lies rot on their own." Silence filled the room, no longer empty but dense with possibility. The corkboard became her battlefield. Maya pulled one photo, a road trip memory, the corners bent, colors faded but smiles loud. She said, "Was this ever real, or were we rehearsing forever?" Louis answered, It was both, but your joy was still your own. She let the picture fall, landing face down like betrayal. Another photo came free, Jenna laughing with a candlelit cake, frosting smudged on her cheek. Maya said, "This image forgives what should not be forgiven." Louise said, "Forgiveness does not belong to the photo, it belongs to you." She ripped it down, edges tearing, scraps falling like feathers from a broken pillow. The corkboard grew patchy, holes where loyalty once pinned itself. Maya said, "These walls held our promises, and now they echo lies." Louise placed a hand on her shoulder, silent but steady, anchoring her storm. The park smelled of wet grass and rust from storm-soaked swings. Maya sat on the bench, fingers tracing initials carved years ago. She said, "We carved forever here, and now forever feels like a cruel word." Louise said, "Forever means different things to different people." Children's laughter rang nearby, sharp and innocent, each sound stabbing her memory. Maya said, "I hate her, but I miss her too, like cutting my own skin." Louise said, "That is the worst cruelty, when the person who hurt you is still the person you long for." She leaned back, rain-damp hoodie sticking to the wood, and whispered, "Every promise feels like a splinter under my skin." Louise said, "Then pull them out one by one until you bleed clean." The playground lights flickered to life, catching on her wet lashes, proof she was still here, still surviving. The cafe's warmth was unchanged, but the air felt foreign. Maya sat at the carved wooden table, the initials underneath pressing against her palm like ghosts. She said, "We swore we would always return here." Louise said, "And you did, you just came back alone." The waitress refilled her mug, gaze heavy with pity she pretended not to notice. "I'm wondering." Maya said, "This table forgave fights but it cannot forgive betrayal." Louise said, "Then let it hold your strength instead of your wounds." She stacked sugar packets into a tiny wall, barrier between her and the empty chairs across from her. Maya whispered, "Every sip tastes like grief now." Louise leaned in, voice quiet but unshaking. "Then let grief be proof that you love deeply. Do not let it chain you." The clink of ceramic mugs echoed louder than any laugh that had once filled this place. Dusk wrapped the city in bruised purple. Maya stood on the rooftop, facing the skyline as the storm's remnants faded into twilight. She said, "I will not let their betrayal write my ending." Louis stood a step behind, his voice steady. "Then write your own chapter, even if the ink stings." The skyscrapers blinked alive, each window a pulse of survival. Maya said, "I am scarred, but scars prove I healed, not that I lost." Louis said, "Scars mean you lived, even through fire." She inhaled, the first full breath in days, letting it anchor her ribs. Maya whispered, "I lost them, but I never lost myself." The words felt like tempered steel, forged from every scream, every silence, every storm. The city exhaled with her, not soft, not gentle, but honest, brutal, and alive. Evening folded over the apartment like a blanket that forgot warmth. Maya opened a cardboard box and fed it relics that used to feel holy. She said, "Keepsakes are heavier after lies." Louis said, "They stop being anchors when you let them." She slid a photo album in and closed the cover gently. Maya said, "I can love what was without keeping what hurts." Louis said, "Memory is not a museum, it is a living room." The room answered with the soft thud of things she once swore to keep. Maya said, "I am keeping my name and my future." Louis said, "That is the only inheritance that matters." The quiet finally belonged to her. They met on the library steps where silence knows how to mind its business. Maya set down a small box and did not flinch. Jenna said, "You do not have to return these." Maya said, "I am returning the weight." The spare key flashed in the weak sun before vanishing into Jenna's palm. Jenna said, "We were not all lies." Maya said, "We were not all truth either." Wind lifted a ribbon from the box and let it go. Louis waited at the curb like a lighthouse that refuses to dim. Maya said, "Take care of the version of me you still carry." Jenna had no answer worth keeping. They chose a bench by the river where words have room to fail. Ethan said, "I am sorry, and I know the price is not mine to set." Maya said, "Regret is not a refund." He stared at the brown water and finally stopped reaching for a script. Ethan said, "I wanted the light without the labor." Maya said, "You wanted my voice without my name." A gull screamed like a witness with perfect timing. Ethan said, "If you ever need anything, I will show up." Maya said, "Show up for the truth you avoided." The current carried their last shared silence out of reach. The cafe table did not ask for explanations when they came to say goodbye to it. Maya traced the groove of their carved initials and felt the nick where the knife slipped. She said, "This table held more truth than we did." Louis said, "Tables are honest. They only carry what you put on them." The barista wiped a ring of coffee like erasing a ghost. Maya said, "I will leave the initials and take the lesson." Louise said, "Let them age into the wood while you grow past it." She placed a napkin over the carving and pressed her palm. The paper held, and so did she. Night returned to the rooftop, but the storm did not follow. Maya opened the old thread, the one that held birthdays and disasters and every small rescue. She said no essays, no autopsies. The city shivered with light, and she typed slowly, each word a measured strike. Louis stood by the door, close enough to catch her if she slipped, far enough to let her stand. Jenna's name glowed like a habit she could finally release. Ethan's icon waited beside it, harmless now. Maya breathed in, and the air did not tremble. She pressed send, and the past had nothing left to argue.